Good evening, YouTube, and welcome back to the channel. This is IMAX Sports with another football video, and today I'm going over my Week 3 NFL Power Rankings for the 2021 NFL season. I do this series on the channel every single week, and now I'm doing announcement videos of it with my top 10. So every week I'm going to be putting out my top 10 before the Sunday Night Football game, and then sometime towards the end of the Sunday Night Football game, I will be releasing my power rankings for the week. I usually like to see most of the Sunday Night Football game before I make my final power rankings for the week, because I want to get as many games as I possibly can get in, as well as getting it out as quickly as I possibly can, because I know that a lot of people are interested in seeing other people's opinions as quickly as possible. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. The first category, as with last week, is just sucks. The category used to be called Dumpster Fire. I've switched it up a little bit this year. We have the Jets at 32, the Falcons at 31, the Jaguars at 30, and the Lions at 29. The Lions haven't played yet this week. The other three all looked terrible. The Falcons played much better this week than last week, but it wasn't anything noticeably good enough to put them above the Jaguars. The Jets played awful. Zach Wilson threw 4 interceptions. He had a pass rating of 20-something, I believe. And the Jaguars just played a terrible game against the tough Broncos defense. Big doubt is our next category. I have the Giants at 28, and I have the Colts at 27. The Giants lost their Week 2 game, and they lost their first week game to the Broncos. They lost this recent game to the Washington football team on Thursday night. They aren't having a great season so far. I wasn't expecting much from them. I didn't think that their offense hasn't been able to click over the last 3 seasons. I wasn't really expecting it to start clicking now, and it really hasn't. Saquon Barkley has been underwhelming, to say the least. Daniel Jones played a great game last week, but the rest of the team just fell apart on him. They're beating themselves, and they aren't that great to begin with, so it's not a good mixture. As for the Colts, I know a lot of people think that they have a very strong team, and I think that they have potential to have a very strong team, but Carson Wentz, I just can't trust Carson Wentz. He's been playing decently, and they've had some decent games against some tough opponents. This week they played a close game against the Rams. Last week they played kind of a not really a close game against Seattle, but their offense is showing some promise, but their defense, which was one of the defining characteristics of their team last year, is giving up almost 30 points a game. I mean, they've played 2 tough teams, don't get me wrong. So they're not down here because they're playing terribly. I just don't believe in their team. I'm sorry, I just don't. I just don't believe in the team that they have currently with Carson Wentz at quarterback. The next category is I'm confused. This was a new category last week, which included the Texans and the Eagles, and I figured I would keep them in here. The Texans lost this week in a somewhat of a close game to the Cleveland Browns. Washington this week beat the Giants. The Eagles lost in a somewhat close game against the 49ers. And the Dolphins got destroyed by the Bills 35-0. The Dolphins beat the Patriots week 1 with a fairly decent, I think the Patriots should have played better in that game. I think the Dolphins were not the better team, even though they won. In the second week, they clearly were the worst team against Buffalo. Tua did get injured, but they weren't playing well with him before he went out anyways. I think that I need to see a lot more from Miami before I'm going to start believing in their team again. But they're in an interesting situation right now, and I'm really curious to see how their season plays out. As for the Eagles, they played a really strong offensive game last week against a bad team. And then this week, they came out and they just didn't do anything. They just sat there. I know the 49ers have a strong defense, but they just sat there. They got a safety. 17-11. What kind of a score is that? I don't know what to think about them. They had a great game last week against the Falcons, and then this week against the 49ers, they just that just didn't do anything. They didn't do anything offensively, and their defense, I mean, they held the 49ers to low points, but it just wasn't, I don't know what to think of them right now. Washington won this week. It was a tough win against a Giants team that I don't think is very strong. It was a little too close for me to think it was anything too impressive, but they did play a close game last week against a fairly strong team, so I really don't know what to think about them right now. And then as for Houston, I mean, Tyrod Taylor is Tyrod Taylor. He's had a pretty okay career so far. He played phenomenally last week, but they were against the Jaguars defense. This week, they still played a fairly decent game against the Cleveland Browns. They kept it close. The Browns are one of the stronger teams in the league, so I think that the Texans have a lot of potential. I just don't know where they are right now. I really can't gauge how any of these teams are right now. They're all like on the cusp of being terrible and being amazing, and I have no idea. The next category we have is the outside contenders. There's 3 teams here that all have something in common, that they've played each other. The Bears beat the Bengals, and the Bengals beat the Vikings. All 3 of those games were within 3 points. I think it's only fair that all 3 of those teams are right next to each other. The Vikings are 0-2. The Bengals are 1-1, and the Bears are 1-1. None of them have been very impressive. The Bengals and the Vikings offenses have both been pretty good. The Vikings have the best offense of the 3. It's clear. They had a great offense last year. The Bengals and the Bears both clearly have fairly strong defenses. The Bears still have a strong defense from last year, and the Bengals didn't play terribly. Their defense didn't play terribly against a strong Minnesota offense last week. Minnesota's been putting up massive points, but their defense just can't keep up as I expected. And I'm really curious to see if any of those teams are able to make the playoffs. I doubt it, especially the 2 in the NFC, because the NFC is very strong this year, and the Bengals have a tough schedule. So I really doubt it. But I think that they're all interesting teams to be watching right now. As for the Patriots and Broncos, I almost made it their own category for them, but I figured that they belonged in this one. The Patriots lost week 1 to Miami in a close game that they should have won. Week 2, we beat the Jets. Not really an accomplishment, so they didn't go anywhere. I think they actually might have went down a place because some other teams improved more than I thought that they would. As for the Broncos are now 2-0. They are the only 2-0 team, and I believe the lowest 2-0 team on this list. That's because they haven't played anyone yet. Their 2 wins were against the Giants, and then this week they beat the Jaguars, I believe. Neither of those teams are very good, but they handled them very well. Their defense is looking strong. Their offense is looking promising with Teddy Bridgewater. I think they're an outside contender for the playoffs, but I think they can make it. The next category is these 3. Last week I had these 2, including the Bengals and the Vikings. This week I have these 3. These 3 I have because I have nowhere to put them. The Ravens currently are playing a very poor game against Kansas City. The game is not over, but Lamar Jackson already has 2 interceptions, and their only scoring play has been a fumble recovery for a touchdown. And that's a rare mistake that Kansas City doesn't usually make. Baltimore isn't playing a very strong game. They lost to the Raiders last week. They had a really good season the last 2 years. Lamar started off his career like 31-8 or something. And this game just isn't impressing me right now. They're just not playing the same football they were playing last year. I know they played 2 of the strongest teams in the league, but that being said, they're not playing their best football. At 16, we have the Chargers. I think the Chargers, I think I overrated the Chargers. I thought the Chargers were going to be very strong this year. They haven't played poorly, but they barely beat Washington. And then this week they played their offense played god-awful against the Cowboys. I was not under the impression that either the Cowboys or the Chargers had very strong defenses, but both of their offenses died this week. I mean, the Cowboys' defense was terrible last year. I mean, I guess it shows us that the Cowboys have a defense, but the Chargers didn't play well against against Washington either last week, their offense. So I really don't know what to think about any of these three teams right now. I thought that they were all going to be almost like locked play-in teams before the season started. So far, I haven't been impressed by any of their offenses or any of their defenses. They've had their moments. Dak Prescott threw 400 yards last week, but he followed up with a 200-yard and 0 touchdown, 1 interception performance. I mean, I don't know what to think about these three teams right now. I think that any of them could be contenders, but they're not looking like it right now. I need some more information for this next category. We have the Packers, the Titans, the Saints, the Panthers, and the 49ers. This just barely breaks into the top 10. At 14, we have the Green Bay Packers. The Packers have only played one game this season so far because they're playing Monday Night Football this week. The only game this season they've lost to the Saints 38-3. The Saints played a phenomenal game. And then this week, the Saints lost 26-7 to the Carolina Panthers, a team I previously thought was not going to be very good this year. The Titans lost to the Seahawks. No, the Titans lost to the Cardinals last week and beat the Seahawks this week. But they suffered a very bad loss to the Cardinals. So, out of these 5 teams, the Panthers and the 49ers are 2-0. The other 3 all have 1 win. The Packers all have 1 loss. The Packers don't have any wins. And all 3 of them have played 1 god-awful game. And 2 of them have played 2 really solid games. I need to see Tennessee play another solid game against another good team before I can move them much higher than right here, because that first game was very concerning, and then the second game isn't going to happen every week. Derrick Henry isn't going to run for 180 yards and 3 touchdowns every single week. And that's the only reason why they were able to win this game, was because Derrick Henry just went insane. As for the Saints, the Saints played a phenomenal game against one of the best teams in the league, and then they played a terrible game against the team I previously thought was one of the worst teams. I need to see the Panthers play more football because I expected them to be bad, and now they're all of a sudden phenomenal. And then the 49ers just kind of got looped into this category because they haven't played anyone yet. Their 2 opponents so far this season are both in the bottom half of my list. Last week, they won a very low-scoring game, and then this week they won last week they won a very high-scoring game against the Lions, sorry. This week they won a very low-scoring game against the Eagles. And neither of those teams, I think, are very good right now. And so I'm very curious to see how they go forward with this season with their very strong defense and their very confusing offense. Next up, we have the Super Bowl contenders. This next category, usually top 10 Super Bowl contenders. We have the Steelers, the Seahawks, the Bills, and the Browns. Last week, the Browns lost a very close game to the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the strongest teams in the league. This week, they won a very strong victory against the Houston Texans, who played a very good game last week. I've seen nothing wrong with the way that the Browns have played this season, and I think the Browns are serious Super Bowl contenders. The Bills and the Steelers are kind of looped in together. I really don't know what to think of either of these teams. The Bills lost to the Steelers week 1. A lot of people were upset that I had them higher than them in the power rankings. And then this week, they completely obliterated Miami. Buffalo looked stronger than the Steelers did last week, and then they looked very strong again this week. I knocked them down a few pegs last week because I wanted to see if they bounced back from a loss, and they did. They bounced back very well. So they are the same team we saw last year. We needed to recalibrate after that loss. As for the Steelers, they won last week, and then coming off of a win, they took a big L to the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm still used to saying Oakland and Los Angeles, so the Raiders, yeah. So basically, the Steelers played a very good game this week. I think that they played almost better than they played against Buffalo. They just couldn't get into the end zone. And Ben Roethlisberger looked very strong this week, and I think that the Steelers did look better this week than last week, even though they lost. That being said, that just means that the Raiders look that much better. As for Seattle, Week 1 they beat the Colts in a pretty strong game. Week 2 they lost to the Titans in a very close game. Again, it was an outlier of a game. You're not going to see 181 yards and 3 touchdowns every week by anyone. So it was an outlier, and they played a very strong game. Russell Wilson is almost perfect this season with passing, and the Seahawks still look like a very strong Super Bowl contender. Last but certainly not least, we have the NFL's Elite. And this is the first time we've ever had 5 teams in this category. That slide looks a little squished. Sorry for the presentation. At number 1, we obviously have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They just demolished the Falcons after winning a pretty solid game against a good team in the Cowboys last week. They're currently 2-0. And Tom Brady just extended his streak to the longest streak, winning streak with over 30 or more points in every game. He has now won 8 games in a row with 30 or more points. That is the longest streak ever, beating his 2 previous records in 2007 and 2010 where he had 7. The Buccaneers are looking phenomenal. Rob Gronkowski has 4 touchdowns at the age of 34 in 2 games. Their defense scored 2 touchdowns this week. They're just phenomenal. Kansas City playing a great game today. Played a great game last week. Clearly number 2. The Cardinals played a fantastic game against a strong Tennessee Titans team last week. This week they played a very close game against the Minnesota Vikings, but they still pulled it out. Vikings have a strong offense. The Cardinals defense didn't look quite as strong, but they still look like a very solid, put together Super Bowl potential team. At number 4, we have the Los Angeles Rams. Similar to the Cardinals, they won last week against a very strong team. And then this week, they looked like they played a close game against not the best team in the league, but they looked solid. They looked strong. They looked in control of the game. The Rams looked in control of the Colts game this week. I know the Colts had a fighting spirit, but the Rams did look control in the game. I think that so far the way that they've played, Matthew Stafford's fitting in very well. They have a very strong defense around him. The Rams are looking like strong Super Bowl contenders. And at number 5 is the wild card, the Oakland Raiders. I think Raiders fans are one of the most persistent groups in the NFL, and a lot of Raiders fans have been upset with the way that I've ranked the Raiders in the past. I think that they have deserved a spot in the NFL's Elite this week. That's why I made the exception with 5 teams. The first week they beat a questionably strong Ravens team. I think the Ravens are strong. They played a great game. And then this week, Derek Carr put up over almost 400 yards against the Steelers defense. I mean, he only has 4 touchdowns in 2 games, but Derek Carr is looking phenomenal. He's looking fantastic. He's looking better than last year. And last year, the Raiders started off 5-2. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep this up, because last year they started 5-2 and finished 7-9. But if they can keep this up, they're going to be very, very strong, a scary team this year. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like, smash subscribe if you are new. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, so make sure to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy my content. I post new videos almost every day. I try to get out at least 4 a week, and I'm really excited to watch for the rest of the season with you guys. Make sure to comment down below what you guys think of my predictions, anything you'd change, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.